Hello, hello. Happy Thursday. Hello, Facebook family. So I wanted to start right out the gate. Do you have limiting beliefs? Like, seriously, do you have limiting beliefs? Let me ask it to you this way. What have you told yourself your whole life that has become your truth? It's how you show up in the world. Maybe it's the belief that just because someone said to you when you were younger that you'll never amount to anything, and you took that as your truth, and it's become a silent mantra in your head, especially on those days when things don't go right, because you will automatically revert to thinking it. Hi, I'm Leslie Cadet, and I'm a mindset and emotional awareness coach for women who are on a mission to make a bigger impact in the world and who strive to adopt a both and rather than an either or mindset. I show them it's possible to embrace and have a both and mindset when they develop skill sets to have an unstoppable mindset, learning how to manage their emotions, which will protect their time. And so, as I said, do you have limiting beliefs? And have you paid attention to the stories you've been telling yourself that have become your truth? Have you ever questioned that maybe your inner voice has been leading you down the wrong path and that you have the power to take back the reins and be the master of your life? Because I think that's a question that a lot of us really don't know how to answer, right? They think, oh, I don't know. It all starts with you taking a walk down memory lane. It's how I work with my clients, and it's where you'll identify the past from your past event in your life or events, experiences that have shaped how you emotionally show up when you are triggered, whether it's by a memory or something that else that externally that just sets you off. And it's where you learn that your past has been holding you hostage from your present life, and in turn has been stopping you from stepping into your future with clarity, purpose, and focus. So, yesterday I talked about the importance of extending grace and learning to forgive yourself, and how it's really important for you to really look after you. And I know, yeah, it can be boring. Yawn, right? Ugh, another self care video, really, Leslie? I know, maybe self care bores you. I get it. All this talk about self care can be really boring, but it's important. And here's why, okay? Self care. Why is it important and what happens when you ignore it? So I did some research for you because I'm not a doctor. Spoiler alert, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a therapist. I am a life coach. So I thought, well, I'm going to bring you the information from the people who this is their job to know this. And of course, I want to know too. So according to the Southern New Hampshire University, I'm going to give you the bad news first. Burning the candle at both ends comes with consequences, which may include but are not limited to burnout, depression, anxiety, resentment, and a whole host of other negative implications. But according to the same study, the good news is engaging in a self care routine has been clinically proven to reduce or eliminate anxiety and depression, reduce stress, improve concentration, minimize frustration and anger, increase happiness, improve energy, and a whole lot more. So before you head out and go, blah, 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 I'm yawning, I want you to think about this. Here's something else for you to think about before you decide to fall asleep or scroll on by. When you think that self care is just another buzzword, I want you to think about this. According to WebMD, 75% to 90% of all doctors' office visits are for stress-related ailments and complaints. Stress can play a part in problems such as headaches, high blood pressure, heart problems, diabetes, skin conditions, asthma, arthritis, depression, and anxiety. I'm going to repeat that, okay? Because maybe you're like you were in mid yawn, or you were like, oh, squirrel, you got distracted. I want you to hear this, okay? 75 to 90% of all doctors' office visits are for stress-related ailments and complaints. Now I know self-care is boring, but you know what? You got to start thinking about maybe I am important enough to start taking better care of myself so that I don't have those stress related ailments that I just shared with you, so that I can actually start living my life, because living your life, isn't that what it's all about? Living rather than not living, right? Like, the quality of life is not sitting and complaining and having these ailments, right? Quality of life is actually taking a stance, taking a stand for yourself, looking out for you, taking care of you. And I shared with you yesterday about, how it's important to extend grace, right? Learning to forgive yourself. And today we're going to talk about letting it go, letting it go so you can release that baggage. The importance of it, like I said, stress, right? Stress is a big, huge thing, 70 to 85%. That's a huge, I'm sorry, 75 to 90%. That's huge. That number is huge. I want you to think about that. So it's really important for you to take care of yourself. So instead of yawning and saying self-care is boring, I want you to start thinking about how important it is for you to start taking care of yourself so that you are not in that 75 to 90% equation of people who are going to the doctor for stress-related ailments, okay? So I'm going to talk to you about a process that I take my clients through. In fact, something I love to talk about, obviously, is, going back and recognizing the stories that we tell ourselves, because our stories have so much power and we forget about that. It's a limiting belief. The story, it becomes bigger because it could have started out, like I said, you'll never amount to anything. And so every single time something happens where it doesn't go right, you're in the middle of something and it doesn't work out the way you want it to, or it does, but then you get freaked out about next steps and start to question whether this was a fluke, if you really actually were good enough to do it, and if you're good enough to continue. Because in the back of your head, in what I call the secret bubble, this is where all of our secret words are living, is that phrase, you'll never amount to anything. Or maybe for you, it's I'm not good enough. Or maybe for you, it's I'm unlovable. Or I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not deserving. Maybe you have a value scale, like I talked about yesterday, this self-worth scale where maybe you only believe that you're only as good as because this is your station, right? Maybe you put yourself in this station status, right? Maybe you think that you're not worthy and deserving of more. And I want you to start thinking that outside of that, I want you to start thinking that maybe this is just stories that I realize I brought forward with me. They no longer serve me. So how can I move through that? Because there's a process. Like I said, I've taken some of my clients through this process. I still continue to do this work a little bit. It's been a little bit more enhanced, but this is specific what this does. So I call it the name it, face it, embrace it, release it. Okay. It's a process. It's where you acknowledge it, right? So you are going to name your limiting belief, the story in your head. Again, I gave you that example. You'll never amount to anything. And you're going to acknowledge that it's there, that this is the story you've been telling yourself. And you're going to acknowledge it to loosen its grip. Because when we allow it to kind of like swirl around, and as I said, that secret bubble right here, that sits there and allows itself to, like, whenever something happens, it's like, oh, go straight to the brain, start thinking it, then into the emotional piece, right? So you learn to name that and start naming that story, because that story is on a loop, whether you are consciously thinking it, most likely subconsciously thinking it, okay? The next step to that is facing it, because facing your past will help you release its hold on you. Again, the past can have a funny way of holding our present hostage, which doesn't allow us to move forward and think about what possibilities of the future could look like. And part of that process is reliving it, because when you know what it is that has you stuck in a series of stories that are on a loop in your head, that are limiting you from moving forward with your life, this is where you do the inner work. This is where you start changing your stories from the ones that are limiting you to ones that can empower you. So when, as I said, I work with my clients this way, and I work with them very closely here because this is hard. It's hard to face the past. It's hard to challenge the stories that have been on a loop in our head. But it's so liberating when you do this, right? Because you are facing it, like facing it head on. You can't go around it. You can't go under or over it. And the reason why I say it that way, that you must go through it, because when you are going through it, it's going to make you stronger. Because sweeping the past under the rug, so to speak, as a metaphor, only hides it, right? It's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. It doesn't really deal with it. It doesn't deal with the issue at hand, the story itself. Like I said, you've got that phrase in that secret bubble, right? But if you keep sweeping the negative stories in your head, you keep adding to it, like you'll never amount up to anything. And then all of a sudden you start adding on to that. Well, you're not good enough. You're not deserving. Well, you only have a certain station because this is where you grew up. You didn't grow up with much. You feel like only people with a silver spoon, because that's like a label that some people have given to other people who may have grown up with like privilege when it comes to money. And so they feel like, oh, well, that puts them in a higher station than I am. That whole station of being poor, middle class, and rich, right? Why do we have these labels? It's just someone who has more money than another person doesn't make them a better person. Someone who has less money doesn't make them any less than this person, right? But it's that story. So we start adding to it. You'll never amount to anything. You're not good enough. You're not worthy or deserving. You're at the station because you grew up here. You grew up poor. I know what that feels like because I used to be that person saying that same story to myself. Oh, you grew up here. You grew up in social housing, so you're not worthy and deserving to have more. Only your friends, the ones that you grew up watching, who grew up in, with both their parents, who grew up in houses, who looked like they had a lot given to them, only they were worthy and deserving of success and all of that in life, right? And everything that I received from the work that I did, I fought tooth and nail to get. I still didn't believe I was worthy and deserving of it because I felt I was at the station. It was only a fluke. But that's a story, right? It's a story in our head. And as I said, if you keep sweeping those negative stories under the rug, at some point, it's just going to be a really big lump in the rug, right? It's just going to become noticeable. You're going to have to deal with it because the past, again, has a really funny way of showing up in those most inopportune moments. Something is going right for you, and all of a sudden you get freaked out about next steps, and then you start reverting back to that. I'm not really good enough to do this. Is this a fluke? Is this a one-off? And you start that loop in your head because then you start remembering back to what that person said to you. You'll amount to nothing, right? You let that become your truth. But when you do face it, head on, you also learn how you cope with conflict. So because that will give you the strength to tackle anything. And I really, truly mean this. I've gone through this process myself. Any of the things that I've done, I have done it all. Before I take my clients through any process, I do it myself. Why? Because how can I speak to something unless I've experienced it? That's just my own belief. I truly believe that because I've experienced and gone through these processes, these transformations, I can speak to it because I've experienced it and I've taken other people through it. Now, the third piece to it is embracing it, right? Because now when you finally embrace it as what once was, because it's the past, right? And you're able to move through your emotions because you allow yourself to feel. You thinking and feeling is okay. It's just not living in that emotional state all the time. Because when you're in that emotional state, it doesn't allow you to move forward. It doesn't allow you to get things done. It doesn't allow you to live your life. And what does that do? It's stealing your time. So I want you to be able to release these things, but to embrace that it was once. First, we're going to get to the release piece, but I want you to understand that you can embrace it as the past. You're able to move through your emotions and allow yourself to change that story in your head. Because you can, by the way, right? You can rewrite your story. So this is where the real power comes into play. Because as I mentioned, you have the strength then to tackle anything when you learn how to manage your emotions so that they don't overpower and manage you. And most importantly, so that your emotions don't rob your time. Think about that. When you're in those emotional states, what happens? Your emotional state robs you of the most valuable commodity that we have that we can't get back, and that's time. Okay, so this is really important. I want you to think about this. The last part of that is releasing it, because you finally get to, not you have to or you must. Well, maybe those are things that you should so that you can live your life, but you get to release it. You get to let it go. You get to release the power that your past had over you, because it no longer holds the power, because you've said it out loud, because you've started to like reframing the story, changing it, rewriting it, making it more of an empowerment rather than a limitation. And because you'll be strong enough to talk about it as an experience, this is a powerful piece to this. Okay, this is what I was talking about. If you see the title where it talks about how you can inspire others, this is where you get to share this, share your challenges, share your struggles, and how you've overcome an experience that used to be a story on the loop in your head, and you took away its power and you gave power back to yourself so you can start living your life. And you can inspire others and give them hope that it's possible for them as well. And that's why it's so important that self-care is not a boring thing in your head, right? Stop thinking about self-care as that buzzword, right? Because it might seem like it's a buzzword, but it really is important that you think about self-care as this amazing tool to help you start living your life from a place of joy, from a place of gratitude, from a place of grace, from a place of ease, from a place of flow, from a place of confidence, living your life so that when you are at your end days, you look back and say, wow, what a ride. I lived my life. I can't believe the life I lived, but I allowed myself to live. That's why I say self-care is so important, because when you ignore it, you might become one of those 75 to 90% people who end up going to the doctor for stress-related symptoms because of stress, because you've not let it go, because you've let the stories in your head become so piled up, you've swept it under the rug, the pile's this high, and you haven't dealt with it. And relive it, if you just name it, relive it, face it, embrace it, release it. Release the power. You take back your power and you start living your life, and you start building your life by your design. So I just wanted to leave you with that. I thought it was really super important. This is what I do. I talk about self-care. I talk about self-love. Of course, I'm a mindset and emotional awareness coach. This is all intertwined. It's important to me. I'm very passionate about it because I know the power that those negative, limiting stories that we've told ourselves our whole life have a way of robbing us of our time, because it allows our emotions to steal our time from us, because we get caught up in that emotion loop, because we allow that story in the secret bubble that we piled onto over the years and allowed it to be such a burden. We've not let it go. So that's what I wanted to leave you with today. I hope that you're having an amazing Thursday. I hope that your week has been good so far. If you know someone who needs to hear this, please share this video, because maybe you never know someone in your life right now who may need to just hear what I've said today to help them break out and break free of those limiting beliefs and allow them to start rewriting their life so they can start building their life, so they can look back with joy rather than regret. Right? Remember to navigate your days with an attitude of gratitude, because with the right attitude, you will have the right mindset for when life throws her curveballs or puts up those roadblocks in your way. You will be in a better frame of mind to manage your emotional trigger moments. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.